In April 1953, inside a secure office in Washington, D.C., a classified authorization was signed. The Cold War was no longer theoretical. The Soviet Union had detonated its own atomic bomb. The Korean War had exposed ideological fracture lines. Espionage was no longer fiction. It was infrastructure. Inside United States intelligence circles, a specific fear was growing. Not fear of invasion, not fear of missiles, but fear of psychological domination. What if an adversary could control thought? What if loyalty could be chemically altered? What if resistance could be dissolved? Those questions gave rise to one of the most controversial intelligence programs in American history. Its codename was MK Ultra. For more than 20 years, its existence was officially denied. When it was exposed in the 1970s, most of its records had already been destroyed. What survives is fragmented financial ledgers, recovered memoranda, survivor testimony, congressional transcripts. Tonight, we reconstruct what the historical record confirms, and just as importantly, what it does not. To understand MK Ultra, we must understand the psychological climate of the early Cold War. The atomic bomb introduced existential uncertainty. The Korean War intensified ideological conflict. American prisoners of war appeared in recorded broadcasts criticizing United States policy. Some confessed to crimes. Some denounced capitalism. Some expressed sympathy for communism. United States officials interpreted this phenomenon as brainwashing. The term entered American vocabulary in the early 1950s, implying systematic psychological reprogramming. In 1953, CIA Director Allen Dulles warned publicly that communist regimes were developing techniques to control human behavior. Whether those fears reflected scientific capability remains debated. But inside the intelligence community, the perception of threat was real. MK Ultra did not emerge from curiosity alone. It followed earlier CIA efforts, Projects Bluebird and Artichoke, which explored interrogation resistance and coercive methods. MK Ultra was escalation, an institutional attempt to understand and potentially weaponize the human mind. In April 1953, Dulles formally approved MK Ultra under the CIA Technical Services staff. The program's operational architect was Sidney Gottlieb, a chemist specializing in toxins and covert applications. MK Ultra was not a single experiment. It was an umbrella program. Over time, more than 100 subprojects were authorized. Funding was distributed covertly through front organizations to universities, hospitals, research institutes, prisons, and private foundations. In many documented cases, researchers did not know the CIA was the true sponsor. The official objective was broad: to investigate methods for influencing human behavior. That ambiguity provided latitude. Influence could mean interrogation, resistance. It could mean disorientation. It could mean chemical incapacitation. It could mean extracting information. Oversight was minimal. Congress was not meaningfully informed. Internal review mechanisms were limited. The structure itself enabled opacity. And opacity enabled ethical erosion. One substance became central to MK Ultra research: LSD. Originally synthesized in 1938 by Swiss chemist Albert Hofmann, its psychoactive effects became widely known in the 1940s. Some psychiatrists believed LSD might unlock repressed trauma. The CIA asked different questions. Could it break resistance? Could it increase suggestibility? Could it destabilize identity? Under MK Ultra funding, LSD was administered in multiple settings. Some subjects volunteered. Others did not. In documented cases, individuals were dosed without their knowledge. One of the most cited incidents involves Frank Olson, a United States Army scientist. In 1953, Olson was secretly given LSD during a CIA retreat. 9 days later, he fell from a New York City hotel window. His death was ruled a suicide. Decades later, investigations raised serious questions about CIA transparency and internal conduct. His family received a formal apology and financial settlement in 1975. What the record does not show is successful, reliable mind control. The effects recorded were chaotic paranoia, anxiety, emotional instability, cognitive disruption. Unpredictability is not precision, and precision is required for control. That distinction matters. One sub-project, later revealed through declassified documents, was called Operation Midnight Climax. CIA-run safe houses in San Francisco and New York were used to observe drug-altered behavior. Sex workers were reportedly paid to lure individuals to these locations. Subjects were sometimes unknowingly administered substances. Agency personnel observed interactions through one-way mirrors. The goal was to study vulnerability, inhibition, and decision-making under chemical influence. Documentation confirms the operation existed. It does not confirm systematic behavioral engineering breakthroughs. The methodology was inconsistent. The ethics were compromised. The scientific rigor was questionable. After World War II, the Nuremberg Code established voluntary consent as fundamental in human experimentation. Yet within intelligence structures in the 1950s and 1960s, enforcement mechanisms were weak. Several MK Ultra projects violated informed consent principles. Some participants were unaware. Some were prisoners. Some were psychiatric patients. Some were otherwise vulnerable individuals. The issue was not only scientific uncertainty. It was institutional accountability. Secrecy insulated decision-making from external review. And without review, ethical boundaries shifted. In 1973, amid post-Watergate scrutiny, CIA Director Richard Helms ordered most MK Ultra files destroyed. But thousands of documents were eliminated. The justification was protection of sources and methods. The effect was historical void. In 1974, reporting by the New York Times exposed domestic intelligence abuses. In 1975, the United States Senate Church Committee began formal investigations. The Rockefeller Commission conducted parallel inquiries. MK Ultra's existence was confirmed publicly. In 1977, additional financial records were unexpectedly discovered through a Freedom of Information Act request. These surviving documents allowed partial reconstruction of the program. But the archive remains incomplete. Gaps remain. And gaps generate speculation. Confirmed. MK Ultra operated from 1953 into the early 1970s. It included over 100 sub-projects. LSD and other substances were tested. Informed consent was violated in documented cases. Records were intentionally destroyed in 1973. Congressional investigations documented misconduct. Not confirmed. Reliable long-term mind control. Remote behavioral activation. Mass psychological programming. Technological thought insertion or extraction. Absence of evidence is not proof of secret success. It is evidence of incomplete documentation. Those are not equivalent conclusions. MK Ultra became more than a program. It became a symbol. It entered popular culture as shorthand for hidden psychological manipulation. Films, novels, and television amplified the mythology. When official records are destroyed, imagination expands. Documented misconduct fueled public distrust. But disciplined analysis requires boundaries. Evidence must remain separate from extrapolation. MK Ultra does not reveal perfected mind control. It reveals institutional overreach under perceived existential threat. It reveals how fear can justify secrecy. It reveals how secrecy weakens oversight. The idea of total psychological domination is compelling. But the historical record shows fragmentation, inconsistency, unpredictability. Chemical influence is not equivalent to engineered belief. And complexity resists simplistic narratives. MK Ultra was real. It operated for roughly 2 decades. It crossed ethical boundaries. It was exposed. Its records were largely destroyed. The surviving documentation confirms misconduct. It does not confirm omnipotent psychological engineering. Understanding that boundary matters. Because when evidence is incomplete, 2 paths emerge: careful reconstruction or mythology. History requires the first.